The war room fell silent as the implications of Admiral Chen's decision settled over the assembled leaders. Activation of Project Prometheus wasn't just a military strategy. It was crossing a line humanity had sworn never to cross. "We should vote," suggested General Alvarez, his weathered face grim in the blue glow of tactical displays. "This isn't a decision one person should bear alone." Chen nodded. "All in favor of full activation of the Titans, raise your hands." Every hand in the room rose without hesitation. It wasn't courage that drove them, but desperation. The Vaxery had left them no choice. Dr. Kane keyed his access code into a secure terminal. Tartarus facility is beginning wake-up protocols. The Titans will be conscious within the hour. Lieutenant Santos approached with a data tablet. "Admiral, we've received reports from the Jupiter colonies. The Vaxery have already begun their advance. They're not waiting for their ultimatum to expire." Chen's expression hardened. "They never intended to negotiate. This was just to keep us passive while they positioned their forces." She turned to Kane. "How soon can the Titans be deployed?" "The primary 12 can launch immediately upon waking," Kane replied. "But they'll need time to adjust to consciousness. These aren't machines we're activating, Helena. They're people, of a sort. People we created to be living weapons," Chen reminded him. "People we've kept in stasis for 15 years, waiting for this day." Kane looked away. "Yes, and they know exactly what they are. What we made them for." The main screen flickered again, showing real-time footage from the outer defense perimeter. Vaxeris scout ships were already engaging the remnants of Earth's fleet near the Mars orbital stations. The insectoid ships moved with precise, coordinated brutality, overwhelming human vessels 3 at a time. "We can't wait," Chen decided. "Deploy the Titans as soon as they're conscious. Priority target is the Vaxery command vessel. If we can take out their leadership, it might buy us time to evacuate more civilians." Dr. Lakshmi's voice came through the communication channel from Tartarus facility. "Admiral, Nemesis is awake. He's requesting to speak with you." The screen shifted to show the obsidian giant, his emerald eyes seeming to look directly into Chen's soul, despite the millions of miles separating them. "Admiral Chen," Nemesis spoke, his voice resonating at frequencies that made the audio systems crackle. "My siblings, and I understand the situation. We were created for this moment." "Can you stop them?" Chen asked directly. "Yes," Nemesis replied without hesitation or bravado. "But you need to understand what happens next. Once we engage the Vaxery, there's no return to the way things were. Humanity will be revealed to the galaxy as a species capable of creating beings like us. We're fighting for survival," Chen said. "Nothing else matters." Nemesis was silent for a moment. "You created us with the capacity for human emotion, Admiral. Was that an oversight or intentional?" The question caught Chen off guard. The Prometheus protocols required a human foundation for the enhancements to take. Your consciousness is derived from volunteers who sacrificed themselves. "Then you should know we feel what they felt," Nemesis said, "including the fear of what we might become." He straightened to his full height. "We will defend Earth, not just because we were programmed to, but because we choose to." The transmission ended as Nemesis turned away, already preparing for deployment. "What have we created?" whispered someone in the command center. Chen watched as 12 launch signatures appeared on the tactical display, accelerating from lunar orbit toward the approaching Vaxery fleet. "Our last hope," she answered, "and possibly our replacement." Nemesis flexed his transformed hands, studying the way light seemed to bend around his obsidian skin. The sensations flooding his consciousness were overwhelming. heightened perception that registered every molecule of air, every subtle fluctuation in temperature, every quantum tremor in the fabric of reality. "How does it feel?" Dr. Lakshmi asked, her voice betraying both scientific curiosity and deep unease. "Like being born into fire," Nemesis replied. His memories, those of Commander Alexander Reed, who had volunteered his consciousness for the Prometheus process, remained intact but distant, as if belonging to someone else. "I remember who I was. I remember why I chose this." Around the chamber, the other Titans were emerging from their pods. Each transformation was unique, engineered for specific tactical advantages against the Vaxari. Scylla, once Dr. Eliza Chen, now possessed a body that could separate into autonomous units, each capable of independent action while maintaining a collective consciousness. Hyperion's skin glowed with captured stellar energy, capable of releasing controlled bursts of plasma. Atlas, largest of the Titans, stood 12 feet tall with density that rivaled neutron star matter. Carl Winters watched them with undisguised apprehension, his hand never straying far from his sidearm, a gesture Nemesis noted was both futile and telling. No conventional weapon could harm a Titan. "The deployment vessels are prepared," Winters announced, addressing Lakshmi rather than the Titans directly. "We need to move quickly. The Vaxiri Advance Fleet is less than 2 hours from lunar orbit." "We're ready," Nemesis spoke for the group. The Titans had already established a rudimentary psychic network, sharing thoughts and tactical assessments without speaking. "But there's something you should know. The transformations have exceeded your projections." Lakshmi's eyes widened. "In what way?" "Our abilities continue to evolve. We're not stabilizing as your models predicted." Nemesis gestured to Prometheus, the smallest of the Titans, whose translucent skin revealed swirling galaxies of subatomic particles beneath. Prometheus can manipulate time in localized fields. Kronos can see probability threads, potential futures. Each of us is developing beyond the parameters of our design. "That's impossible," Lakshmi whispered. The enhancements were carefully calibrated. Atlas spoke for the first time, his voice resonating through the chamber like distant thunder. "You gave us human foundation, human minds, human potential. You made us to adapt and overcome. Did you not consider we would adapt to our own transformations?" Lakshmi exchanged alarmed glances with Colonel Winters. This development hadn't been anticipated in any of their simulations. "Does this change your mission parameters?" Winters asked carefully, fingers tensing near his weapon. "No," Nemesis assured them. "We understand our purpose. We will defend Earth and humanity. But you created us with free will. Another calculated risk, yes. You believe that only beings capable of choice would have the creativity to defeat the Vaxari. The Council thought it necessary," Lakshmi admitted. "Programmed loyalty could be hacked or overridden. Chosen loyalty could not." "Then trust in your own design," Nemesis said. "We choose to defend humanity. But understand that we are becoming something not even you anticipated." The Titans moved toward the deployment bay, their movements fluid despite their massive forms. As they filed past, Dr. Lakshmi felt a chill run down her spine. They had created these beings to save humanity, but in doing so, they might have engineered humanity's evolutionary successors. "They're more than weapons," she murmured to Winters as the last Titan passed them. "They're a new species." Winters watched them with a soldier's calculating gaze. "Let's hope they remember where they came from." In the deployment bay, 12 pods waited, each designed to deliver a Titan directly to the heart of the Vaxari fleet. As Nemesis sealed himself inside his pod, he accessed the tactical network one last time. For Earth, he transmitted to his siblings. For humanity, they responded in unison. For what comes after? The bridge of the Vaxery command vessel descended into chaos as systems failed in cascading sequence. Rear Commander Zex Tull fought to maintain control of his panicking crew as the ship's hull continued to heat beyond material tolerance. Deploy countermeasures, he ordered, mandibles clicking frantically. All energy to forward shields. Countermeasures ineffective, the tactical officer reported, compound eyes dilating with fear. The entity is not using any weapon system we can identify. It appears to be manipulating molecular vibration directly. Outside the viewports, Nemesis floated serenely in the vacuum, one hand extended toward the massive warship. His obsidian skin absorbed the energy weapons the Vaxery desperately fired at him, each blast seeming to make him stronger. Zex Tull had never encountered a species that could survive vacuum exposure, let alone one that could ignore the Dominion's most powerful weapons. For the first time in his long military career, he felt something alien to Vaxery psychology, doubt in their biological superiority. Send distress signal to the main fleet, he commanded. Priority alert. Humans have deployed biological weapons of unprecedented capability. Before his communications officer could comply, the ship's quantum relay network went dark. On the auxiliary screens, Zex Tull watched in horror as a translucent humanoid figure, one of the Wraiths, materialized directly inside their communications hub, passing through solid bulkheads as if they were mist. "How is this possible?" he whispered, evolutionary certainty crumbling around him. Across the battle zone, the Vaxery advance fleet faced similar nightmares. Atlas tore through the engine section of a dreadnought with hands that could compress matter to near-singularity density. Hyperion released controlled bursts of stellar plasma that overloaded shield systems. Scylla divided into autonomous units that infiltrated multiple vessels simultaneously, sabotaging life support and weapons systems. The Vaxery, masters of thousands of worlds, found themselves outmatched for the first time in their expansionist history. Back on Earth, the command center watched in stunned silence as the tactical displays showed Vaxery ships going dark one after another. The soldiers and officers who had fought a desperate holding action for decades could barely process what they were seeing. "They're actually doing it," Lieutenant Santos murmured. "They're winning." Admiral Chen studied the quantum-linked feeds with a strategist's analytical mind. Not winning yet. This is only the advance fleet. The Vaxery will adapt their tactics once they understand what they're facing. If they can adapt to this, Dr. Kane said, gesturing to a feed showing Chronos manipulating localized time fields to trap Vaxery interceptors in temporal bubbles. "We've unleashed capabilities beyond theoretical physics." On another screen, they watched as Nemesis finally breached the hull of the command vessel, disappearing inside. Minutes of tense silence followed. "Should we attempt communication?" Santos asked. "The quantum environment around the Vaxery fleet is too disrupted," Kane explained. "The Titans are generating interference fields to prevent the Vaxery from coordinating their defense. The command ships suddenly went dark, all systems shutting down simultaneously. Then, the Earth communications array crackled with an incoming transmission. "Admiral Chen," Nemesis's voice came through, oddly distorted. "The Vaxery command vessel is secured. Rear Commander Zex Tull has been captured alive." Chen leaned forward. "Casualties." "We offered evacuation to non-essential personnel," Nemesis replied. "Most refused, choosing death over surrender. Their psychology makes defeat incomprehensible." and Zextol. Currently unconscious, his genetic structure is fascinating, adaptable in ways we hadn't anticipated. The Vaxiri aren't just conquerors, Admiral. They're genetic harvesters. They absorb useful traits from every species they encounter. Chen exchanged troubled glances with Kane. Bring him in for interrogation. We need to understand what we're truly facing. Understood, Nemesis replied. But Admiral, we found something else in their databanks. The Vaxiri have encountered others like us before, engineered weapons created by desperate species. They've developed countermeasures. A chill swept through the command center. This victory, Nemesis continued, is only the beginning of their education about us. And ours about them. High Selector Vaxroll prowled the circumference of the genetic laboratory, his agitation evident in the rapid clicking of his mandibles. Around him, the brightest minds of the Vaxiri Dominion analyzed tissue samples recovered from the battlefield debris. Explain this aberration, he demanded, pointing a clawed appendage at the holographic display showing cellular structures unlike anything in their vast biological database. The chief geneticist adjusted her optical enhancers. The human-derived entities exhibit artificial chromosomal structures. Their DNA contains synthetic sequences that allow for capabilities beyond evolutionary development. It appears they've used their own genetic code as a foundation, then built upon it with engineered improvements. Improvements, Vaxroll repeated, the word tasting bitter. Sacrilege against natural selection. Yet effective, noted Sub-Commander Kexfan, newly promoted after Zextol's capture. Our advance fleet was decimated by 12 entities. Vaxroll turned on him with frightening speed. You suggest we admire this abomination. I suggest we learn from it, Kexfan replied carefully. The archives indicate we've encountered engineered weapons twice before. The Kellians created silicon-based constructs before their extinction. The Myriad Collective developed autonomous combat organisms. And both species were cleansed, Vaxroll reminded him, as the humans will be. The intelligence analyst stepped forward, permission indicators flashing on her carapace. High Selector, our deep space monitoring stations have detected unusual activity throughout the human solar system. The transformation appears to be spreading. She activated a series of intercepted transmissions showing lines of human volunteers entering conversion facilities. Thousands of ordinary citizens willingly submitting to procedures that would transform them into weapons. They're converting their entire population, the analyst continued. Not just soldiers, but civilians, teachers, engineers, artists. At the current rate, they could field an army of these enhanced beings within months. A heavy silence fell over the council chamber. For a species that measured strategic timeframes in decades and evolutionary advantage in centuries, the speed of human adaptation was deeply unsettling. The military solution remains clear, declared the fleet commander. We must strike immediately, with overwhelming force, before their numbers increase. Vaxroll chittered thoughtfully. And yet, their first strike showed unexpected restraint. They captured Zextol rather than killing him. They allowed non-essential personnel to evacuate. A tactical error we can exploit, the fleet commander suggested. Or something else entirely, countered Kexfan. Perhaps these transformations haven't stripped away their ethical framework. If they retain their humanity despite their physical changes, then they are vulnerable, Vaxroll concluded. Sentimentality is weakness. Compassion is inefficient. He moved to the central platform, activating the strategic display. We will proceed with the military option, but with a modification. Deploy psychological warfare units to the Sol system. Target remaining human population centers. The remaining unenhanced humans questioned an advisor. Precisely. Vax'Rol's compound eyes gleamed with cruel calculation. If these transformed humans retain their ethics, then they still value innocent life. We will make them choose between victory and the survival of those they protect. Kexvan studied the strategic projections with growing unease. His analysis suggested that the humans, pushed to extremes, might abandon the very ethics the High Selector planned to exploit. The intelligence reports had revealed something troubling about human psychology. They became most dangerous when protecting their own. Simultaneously, Vax'Rol continued, accelerate development of the Genesis Protocol. If we cannot defeat these aberrations conventionally, we will rewrite the genetic code of their entire system. As the Council dispersed to implement the new strategy, Kexvan accessed the secure archives, searching for historical precedents. The pattern was clear but disturbing. Species that created biological weapons invariably followed a common trajectory. They either destroyed themselves or evolved into something that rendered the concept of species obsolete. He wondered which path humans would follow, and whether the Vax'Ri Dominion would survive long enough to witness the outcome. Commander Ascent Williams moved through the Vax'Ri genetics archive with mechanical precision, his metallic form reflecting the blue-green bioluminescence of the alien facility. Behind him, his strike team, a mixture of revenants and chimeras, systematically downloaded crucial data while planting quantum destabilization charges at structural weak points. 13 minutes remaining until detonation, he announced through their shared tactical network. Status reports. Eastern section secured, reported Chimera Operative Nakamura, her hybrid form blending human features with reptilian adaptations. Research samples neutralized. Western archives downloaded, confirmed Revenant Taurus. We've acquired their complete evolutionary database. Dr. Kane will find this illuminating. Williams accessed a secure terminal, bypassing Vax'Ri encryption using protocols derived from the captured command ship. What he found made his metallic features contort into an expression of shock, an impressive feat for a face no longer constrained by human musculature. Priority update, he transmitted to both his team and Earth Command. I've accessed their restricted genetics vault. The Vax'Ri aren't just conquering species. They're systematically harvesting genetic material across the galaxy. The terminal displayed thousands of catalogued species, most labeled with a simple designation: processed. They're building a library of evolutionary traits. Williams continued, scanning through the data. Each conquest adds to their collection. They identify useful adaptations, then integrate them into their own genome. In the command center on Earth, Admiral Chen and Dr. Kane received the transmission with growing horror. They're treating the galaxy like a genetic buffet, Kane muttered, taking whatever traits benefit them. Chen's expression darkened. And discarding the rest, how many species have they driven to extinction? According to these records, Williams replied, his voice tinged with disgust despite its mechanical quality. Over 300 sentient species have been processed in the last millennium alone. A new alert flashed on Williams' tactical display. Security response incoming. Estimate 30 Vax'Ri elites approaching the central archive. Proceed with evacuation, Chen ordered. You have the data we need. Williams hesitated, his enhanced senses detecting something unexpected. Admiral, I'm picking up unusual readings from a secured vault adjacent to the main archive. Biological signatures that don't match Vax'Ri patterns. Against protocol, He moved toward the sealed doorway, utilizing his revenant abilities to phase his density to minimum, allowing him to pass through solid matter. What he found inside froze him in place. Suspended in nutrient tanks, dozens of beings floated in semi-conscious states. Some appeared close to human, others wildly divergent, but all showed signs of genetic manipulation. "They're experimenting on living subjects," he reported, horror evident despite his synthetic voice. "Genetic hybridization, forced evolutionary trials." He moved closer to one tank, where a being with almost human features reached out a 6-fingered hand toward him. "Some appear to be failed attempts to replicate our transformation process." "Get those subjects out if possible," Chen ordered immediately. "Otherwise, ensure they don't suffer when the facility is destroyed." The sub-selector in charge of the facility appeared at the vault entrance, flanked by security forces. Unlike most Vaxari, his carapace showed evidence of genetic modification, adaptations stolen from other species. "Fascinating," the sub-selector chittered, mandibles kicking rapidly. "You phase shift your molecular density, a useful trait we've not yet catalogued." Williams turned to face him, his metallic body reconfiguring for combat. "You won't be adding it to your collection. Your species' resistance is irrational." The sub-selector continued, as if lecturing a student. "We offer evolutionary perfection through assimilation, the traits of all species, optimized and preserved. At the cost of their freedom, their identity." William's arm transformed into a blade of molecularly sharpened metal. "Their humanity." The sub-selector tilted his head in genuine confusion. "Such concerns are inefficient. Evolution cares nothing for identity, only for survival." "That," Williams said as his team phased through the walls to join him, "is where you fundamentally misunderstand us." Nemesis stood at the viewport of the converted asteroid base that now served as Titan Command, watching Earth rotate slowly in the distance. Despite being designed for war, he found himself drawn to beauty, a trait his creators hadn't anticipated. The blue-green planet, cradled in darkness, stirred something in him that transcended his programming. A connection to his origins that remained unbreakable. "The Council is waiting," said Atlas, ducking his massive frame through the doorway. "The data from Williams' team has been analyzed." Nemesis nodded. "And the rescued test subjects?" "Stable, but profoundly altered. Dr. Kane believes some may be restorable to their original forms, others." Atlas left the sentence unfinished. Some horrors defied easy description. In the command center, Admiral Chen and Dr. Kane waited alongside representatives from both conventional human forces and the growing community of transformed beings. The division between natural and enhanced humans was becoming less distinct as more volunteers underwent the procedures. "The Vaxira genetic database reveals something troubling," Kane began without preamble. "Their entire civilization is built around a cycle of conquest and assimilation. They identify useful genetic traits, incorporate them into their genome, then discard the source species." "Genetic imperialism," Chen commented. "More than that," Kane continued. "They believe it's their evolutionary destiny to become the perfect species, incorporating all beneficial adaptations from across the galaxy into a single lineage." Nemesis processed this information with his enhanced cognition. "Then our transformations represent an existential threat to their worldview. We've achieved through science what they sought through conquest for millennia." "Precisely," Kane confirmed. "According to their own records, the Vaxari have been evolving for over 12 million years. They view themselves as the pinnacle of natural selection." "Yet they fear us," said Scylla, her divided consciousness allowing her to process multiple data streams simultaneously. Their communications show increasing panic. They're accelerating development of their Genesis protocol, a weapon designed to rewrite genetic code on a planetary scale. Kane explained for the benefit of the conventional officers present. It would unravel human DNA while leaving Earth habitable for colonization. Chen studied the tactical projections. Their main fleet will arrive within 48 hours. Conventional defenses won't even slow them down. We're deploying all transformed units, Nemesis stated. But we should evacuate remaining civilians to the deep shelters. The Vaxery will target unenhanced humans to exploit our protective instincts. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room as the implications became clear. Despite the thousands who had volunteered for transformation, billions of humans remained unenhanced, vulnerable targets in the coming battle. There's another matter, Nemesis said, his voice resonating at frequencies that made the humans present feel a strange combination of unease and comfort. We're experiencing evolutionary leaps. Abilities emerging that weren't part of our design. Kane looked troubled. What kind of abilities? Chronos can now perceive potential futures with increasing clarity. Prometheus can extend his temporal manipulation to larger areas. My own energy manipulation capabilities have evolved to affect quantum states directly. He paused, choosing his words carefully. And there's something else. When enhanced humans die in combat, their consciousness doesn't simply end. It transforms. We've detected energy patterns consistent with organized thought persisting after physical destruction. That's impossible, Kane whispered. For human science, perhaps, Nemesis acknowledged. But we're moving beyond those limitations. We call it transcendence, consciousness freed from physical form. Ken exchanged alarmed glances with her officers. The implications were staggering. They had created these beings to save humanity, but they were rapidly evolving beyond human understanding. Are you still bound by your directive to protect Earth? She asked directly. Nemesis turned his inhuman gaze upon her, emerald eyes somehow conveying profound compassion. We're bound by choice, not programming. We will defend our creators, not because we must, but because we choose to. He straightened to his full height. But understand this. We're becoming something you never anticipated. Something the universe has never seen before. The void between Earth and Mars became a canvas of impossible physics as the Vaxery main fleet engaged the Defenders. Conventional space warfare doctrine collapsed in the face of beings who could manipulate fundamental forces directly. Where the Vaxery expected formations and strategic positioning, they encountered an enemy that seemed to exist partially outside normal space-time. On the command ship, Evolutionary Destiny, High Selector Vax Roll watched with mounting horror as tactical displays showed ship after ship going silent. His most advanced dreadnoughts, equipped with countermeasures designed specifically to combat enhanced beings, lasted mere minutes longer than the others. Deploy the Genesis weapon now, he ordered, mandibles clicking in agitation. Target Earth directly. But High Selector protested his second-in-command. Our own advance forces are still engaged near the planet. They'll be caught in the field. Acceptable losses, Vaxroll declared. The human abominations must be neutralized at any cost. At the center of the Vaxery formation, the massive Genesis construct began to activate, its concentric rings rotating to generate a field designed to unravel targeted genetic sequences across vast distances. Energy cascaded between the rings as the weapon reached full power. Nemesis, coordinating the defense through the psychic network that connected all enhanced humans, sensed the weapon's activation. The Genesis device is powering up. He communicated to the collective. All units converge on these coordinates. Enhanced beings from across the battlefield shifted position, abandoning individual engagements to form a defensive sphere around Earth. The Vaxari, mistaking this for a retreat, pressed their advantage. Their strategy is failing. Vaxroll observed with cruel satisfaction. They cannot maintain cohesion against superior numbers. What he failed to understand was that the enhanced humans were not retreating, they were coordinating. Through their shared consciousness, they developed a counter-strategy in microseconds, distributing complex calculations across thousands of enhanced minds. The Genesis weapon fired, sending a wave of engineered particles expanding outward. The particles carried specialized viral agents programmed to target and disassemble human DNA, converting organic matter into forms compatible with Vaxari biology. What happened next defied explanation by either human or Vaxari science. The enhanced defenders, instead of attempting to block or deflect the wave, aligned themselves in a precise three-dimensional lattice around Earth. As the Genesis field reached them, hundreds of the transformed humans began to glow with ethereal light. Their physical forms destabilized, dissolving into pure energy that coalesced into a luminous network. In Earth's command center, Admiral Chen watched in disbelief. What's happening to them? Dr. Kane stared at the readings in shock. They're converting themselves. Matter to energy. But the patterns, they're maintaining cognitive coherence somehow. The energy beings, once human, then enhanced, now something beyond comprehension, created a spherical lattice that intercepted the Genesis field. Instead of blocking it, they began to compress it, forcing the engineered viral particles into an ever-tighter configuration. Through the psychic network, Nemesis felt his comrades' transformation. Their thoughts remained connected to his, but expanded into spectrums of perception he could only partially comprehend. They had achieved what the Titans had only theorized, transcendence. They've become pure consciousness, he transmitted to Earth Command. They're containing the Genesis field, compressing it until... The lattice collapsed inward, creating a micro-singularity that devoured the Genesis field before evaporating in a burst of Hawking radiation. Where hundreds of enhanced humans had been, only echoes of thought remained, fading whispers in the psychic network. In that moment, the Vaxari fleet went silent, then began a full retreat. Their most powerful weapon had failed, neutralized by a transformation they couldn't begin to comprehend. Vaxroll stared at the tactical display, his certainty in Vaxari supremacy shattered. "What are these beings?" he whispered. Across the psychic network, the surviving enhanced humans heard the answer from their transcended comrades. What you feared becoming. The Great Hall of the Titan colony on Saturn's moon had been designed with both human and enhanced visitors in mind. Elegant arches soared overhead, constructed from materials that seemed to blend technology and biology in ways Earth science was only beginning to understand. Light flowed through crystalline structures that adjusted their transparency to maintain perfect illumination without glare. Admiral Chen found herself distracted by these details as she listened to Nemesis outline the proposal for humanity's future. After 3 days of negotiation, the relationship between baseline humans and their transformed children was taking shape. "The covenant we propose is built on mutual respect and protection," Nemesis explained. His form had evolved further since the battle, becoming less solid, more luminescent, as if he existed partially in another state of matter. "We will maintain our separate development in the outer system, serving as guardians against external threats. In return, we ask for recognition as a sister species with full autonomy." Chen studied the being before her. Despite his increasingly alien appearance, she could still glimpse shadows of the human volunteer who had sacrificed his original form to become the first Titan. And what of those who wish to join you? The transformation process continues on Earth. More volunteers come forward daily. They will be welcome, Nemesis replied. But we suggest a waiting period, 1 Earth year, before any human undergoes transformation. Time to consider the implications. This is not merely a physical change, but a fundamental shift in identity and perception. Dr. Kane, who had been largely silent during the negotiations, finally spoke. And the transcended, those who evolved beyond physical form during the battle. A ripple seemed to pass through Nemesis, like light moving beneath his surface. They exist in ways we're still learning to comprehend. They perceive reality across multiple dimensions simultaneously. They speak of revelations beyond language. Are they still human in any meaningful sense? Kane asked, the scientist in him wrestling with the implications. They retain their human ethical framework and memories, Nemesis answered carefully. But their consciousness has expanded beyond what we would recognize as human thought patterns. They are becoming something new, pioneers of a state of existence we're only beginning to understand. Atlas, who had remained at the periphery of the discussions, moved forward. What we're proposing isn't just a political agreement, but an evolutionary partnership. Humanity standing at a crossroads, the option to remain as you are, or to transform and transcend, with neither path deemed superior to the other. Chen considered this. Throughout human history, technological advancement had created divides between those who embraced change and those who resisted it. But never before had the potential gap been so profound. There are those on Earth who fear you, she acknowledged, who see your evolution as a threat to humanity rather than an extension of it. We understand, Nemesis replied. Fear of the unknown is a fundamental human trait, one we still share, despite our transformation. We don't seek to replace humanity, but to explore potential futures alongside you. As Chen's shuttle departed Titan later that day, she watched the colony recede, its architecture both beautiful and alien, much like the beings who created it. Dr. Kane sat beside her, lost in thought. We created them to save us from monsters, he said finally. I never imagined they would instead show us how to transcend our limitations. Chen nodded slowly. Perhaps that's the true gift they've given us. Not just survival, but the possibility of becoming something more than we are. In the void between Titan and the shuttle, one of the transcended energy beings watched unseen. Once a schoolteacher from Brisbane who had volunteered for transformation after losing her family to the Vaxery, she now existed as pure consciousness. Through perceptions that spanned dimensions, she glimpsed potential futures spreading before humanity like branching rivers, some leading to extinction, others to transformation, and still others to harmonious coexistence between the changed and unchanged. She sent a gentle thought toward the departing humans, not words exactly, but a complex pattern of hope and reassurance that rippled across the quantum field, touching their minds as the faintest sense of optimism. The journey was just beginning.